Right, tell me who you are and where you come from.
I'm Rhianna Pratchett. I'm a games writer and narrative designer, and I come from London.
Tell me what that means, games writer and narrative designer.
Okay, so that means I basically go in and work on a game story. I help design the structure for it, I help write the dialogue, and maybe kind of direct the voice actors who bring the characters to life. It can mean anything from writing marketing copy to advertorial copy to pretty much anything that includes story or words.
And what types of games are you working on at the minute, or have you worked on?
Well, I've just, my main games have been the Overlord series, Heavenly Sword, Mirror's Edge, and Viking Battle for Asgard. Heavenly Sword was a big martial arts, epic fantasy game. Overlord was a kind of twisted fantasy, humorous game, kind of a dark, like playing Lord of the Rings from Sauron's side is probably how you best describe it, and also evil Pikmin. That was one of the other descriptions for it. And Mirror's Edge, a kind of contemporary, gritty, sort of semi-future, kind of near-future game involving a kind of a network of runners that operate in this city where communication is severely limited and monitored, and they use parkour and free running to transport information around. And I've just finished Overlord 2, which is a sequel to Overlord. Also Dark Legend, which is the Overlord Wii game, and Minions, which is the Overlord DS game. All completely different stories, all deliciously evil.
Such an exciting prospect for a writer, because your background was as a games journalist, as a writer initially.
That's right. It definitely. I spent so long kind of analysing and criticising games that it's kind of interesting being on the other side of the fence. I've been doing this for about kind of 8 years now, and I can definitely see why some of the problems that occur in games happened, and it's definitely given me a better overall perspective.
What types of barriers have you come up against, particularly with writing? And I imagine that there's cultural elements. I imagine that there's all kinds of things. What types of barriers have you come up against that perhaps you may have criticized in the past?
Well, the games industry is still relatively new, and as far as writing goes within that, it's even newer. With film and TV, the script, the story is very well established. With games, we're sort of feeling our way. We're trying to find what works best for games. They're such a unique entertainment medium that we really have to spend time thinking, okay, how's best to tell a story in this game using this gameplay, rather than sort of taking, okay, this is how it's done in film, plot, we'll do it in a game and it'll be great. I mean, the cutscenes in Heavenly Sword were kind of amazing and lush, and we used facial and body mocap, but they just wouldn't be suited for something like Overlord. And so it is kind of actually getting in there, getting our hands dirty, working out what works best for games. And at the moment there's a lot of borrowing from other entertainment mediums, which kind of works to a point, but we really have to sort of sit down and do the hard graft.
What types of things work specifically for games? Because obviously, as you say, you're bringing in from different media, and it's interesting, we're seeing different media taking what they think is from games. What types of things work particularly well for games, and what do you think other people are learning from them?
I think what's really interesting about a game storytelling is the role of the player within them. Obviously the player is central to the experience, and you're not crafting a story necessarily in a linear way. You're crafting a kind of a story experience that happens around the player, that they're driving forward, or ideally you should be. It should be something that they feel a definite part of, rather than something they're just sitting back and watching happen. So there's lots of techniques that are being used to tell stories in less linear ways, allow the player to become a kind of participant in that story as well. I mean, think of something like Shadow of the Colossus or Ico, quite minimalistic on traditional storytelling techniques, but they engage the player as a storyteller in a very innovative way, and I think that's sort of building on slowly. You've also got things like BioShock, which was fantastic for very visual storytelling through kind of adverts and setup of the world, even the position of bodies, very kind of well integrated, lots of different levels of storytelling involved there.
It's a relatively new format for writers. So how many people are involved in this space, and how would you recommend that people come along and do this kind of thing if this is what they're interested in?
Okay, well, there are a lot more games writers around than there used to be. Obviously things like Austin GDC has its own writer track. We've had a few talks at this GDC about writing. A little less than last year. I think there was a bit of overkill in terms of the kind of narrative talks. It's been dialed back a little bit. The best thing to do to be a games writer is kind of play lots of games, study different storytelling forms, see what works best in games as well. You can, beg, borrow and steal from other entertainment mediums. You cannot take anything kind of wholly and make it work in games. You really can't. And kind of get involved in mod making or the fan community is really great for learning all aspects of game design and being involved in a team. I came from games journalism and that was actually really good for making me work through a game and look at it from a critical eye, look at it what it did well and what it didn't do so well. It was great for picking up contacts. And network like crazy. It's still a kind of a relatively small industry, so things like GDC, like Develop, like E3 are great for kind of meeting developers and meeting kind of potential employers and just seeing what's out there and what people are looking for.
And what feedback have you had from the game playing and also the game creating community? Because I imagine that in that game writing and game story has often been the last thing tacked onto a game. How have you, first of all, made your case to the game development community, and secondly, how have people responded? What's been the feedback?
I think what was interesting with Overlord in particular is, as an industry, we get very, very obsessed with making people cry. It's like a game has to make people cry. I'm thinking, what's so great about crying? Jesus, the world is dark enough, especially at the moment. Overlord, I think, was successful because it made people smile, because it made people laugh. Because the gameplay was inherently funny. You're rampaging around the countryside with these kind of sycophantic minions, and they're kind of bringing you presents, and they're kind of setting fire to hobbits and things like that. Well, halflings actually, and it was all deliciously fun, and it had really good voice actors, and it all gelled together really well, and it made people smile. And that seems to have resonated so much in a way. Now I keep saying, forget about making people cry. Look at ways to make people smile. And definitely Overlord has been my best calling card. Something that's interesting, particularly about this GDC and the meetings I'm having, is there are a lot more people looking for kind of writers and narrative professionals really early on, like sort of pre-production, to help scope out ideas and build worlds, and that's so kind of reassuring, because it's something games writers have gone on about for ages, saying get us in early, don't get us in late, when all we can do is what I call Weekend at Bernie's writing, which is all you do, it's kind of a dead story, but you just put makeup on it and you wiggle it around and try and make it alive, but it's essentially dead. And it's really depressing to get involved in that level, so it's so good to see people looking for narrative professionals early on.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Rhianna.
Thank you, Alex.